Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fratello Talks. I'm your host, Nacho, and this week I am joined by my colleagues
Morgan
and
RJ.
And today we're going to be discussing when should you service your watch. But before we do that, let's check out what's on the wrist. RJ, what's on your wrist today?
I'm wearing, just came in, an Omega Seamaster 300M Olympic Games 2024 edition.
That's got RJ written all over it.
I know.
Yeah, it's the Paris edition.
So it's the
French one.
white dial 300M with moonshine gold bezel with raised numerals, and I put it on a NATO strap.
Very cool.
To match the color of the moonshine. I think that's nice. It came on the bracelet in the office, but I prefer it on a NATO strap.
The bracelet's not two-tone, right?
No,
it's just steel.
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
not
it's
two-tone,
just steel.
and there's a quick release actually on that one. It's pretty new from the brand actually. Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
That's
I really like it.
Really
I
nice.
tried it out last summer or end of August from a guy, Cool Side on the Moon on Instagram. He was also in Switzerland, and he just bought this watch, wearing it, and I wore it for like an afternoon, and I really fell in love with it. I really like this watch.
Very, very
For
cool.
me, it's my
I guess
favorite.
we'll have a
300M.
We'll have an upcoming article.
Yes,
from you
we
on that
will.
one. Lovely, fantastic. Morgan, what's on your wrist?
Also an Omega Seamaster 300M, but this one is the Bond one, the 25.
The OG.
Yeah, the OG,
The OG.
2531.80.
Very cool.
So I bought it like 2 weeks and a half ago, I think, from now on, and it's on my wrist since pretty much.
Fantastic.
So, it's super nice.
Perfect. Yeah, and on my wrist I have my my Speedy, classic
course,
classic Speedy with the 1681 movement. 1861.
18,
Sorry, my numerical dyslexia kicks in once again. But yeah, that's from
That's
the
the classic.
2000 2001,
Yeah.
the classic.
So that's 3570.50.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one.
Yeah. So we're a little bit Omega heavy today.
Yeah, a little bit.
Unplanned because just came in.
This just came in. You were wearing a different
but
watch earlier, but
Morgan is wearing that watch ever since.
non-stop.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
haven't seen it with
Yeah.
something different. Sell all your other watches.
I'm glad you've
maybe.
changed your clothes more often than your watch. Let's just say that. Perfect.
Actually, yeah.
But let's jump into the topic. Actually, nothing else to do. So let's. When do you service your watches, guys? Do you have a specific thing you look out for? People ask us all the time. How often should you do it? And
Every year, man. No, it's the manual of your watch will do an indication. So often it says between 3 and 5 years.
Yeah.
I feel that's a little bit of a too short interval. I would do a bit longer. It also depends on the performance of your watch. Last year I bought a Breguet Tradition. I got it in. I put it on the Vichy machine, but also before I could see that the balance wheel, it was very slow.
It
so
was
it went in
running
slow
low, yeah.
motion. So I looked at on the timing machine, and it set the amplitude of 200 degrees.
Oh, okay.
And that's really low.
Yeah.
So it should be more around 300 degrees. And that's, for me, is always the indicator if a watch needs service or not.
Right.
Not if it's plus 10 or minus 10 or whatever. That's an easy tweak. But for me, it's really about the amplitude. If that's
Right.
if that's too low.
That's your go-to indicator. You pop
Yes.
it on the time grapher, and then you see.
The problem is if you don't service your watch, and that's also a discussion I had with our watchmaker, Paul. He said, I get in watches, like often Rolex watches that have been bought 30 or 40 years ago and never saw a single service. And these people, they are like in shock when they hear the price, because often they get brought in when they don't function or don't work anymore. Then it becomes expensive, because then you need to replace parts.
Yeah.
So often, just like with a car, the maintenance is just preventing the watch from breaking down and to replace expensive parts. And then, it's up to you how often you want to do it. Of course, a brand doesn't dictate that, but I would say it's have your watch checked at least every 5 years. The watchmaker knows what to look for. I guess it's amplitude and some other indicators. If the amplitude is too low, it needs to have a service. But also, if after 2 years your watch is running plus 30 seconds,
that's not normal.
have it serviced, because it can also indicate it has been magnetized. So then it's simple. You can demagnetize it or have it demagnetized.
You can buy a little tool on Amazon for like $15, something like that.
Yeah,
it's
true.
a blue.
Yeah, but you
plastic
still don't
box and you
know
can do it,
what happened to the watch.
Yeah, that's right.
So it can be dropped or bumped into something. So I think it would be good to have it checked by a watchmaker.
Absolutely. When in doubt, always go to a watchmaker.
I actually as soon as the watch is not running correctly, like you said, like plus or minus 10, it depends on the movement of the watch. But if it loses like 1 or 2 minutes a day, or
then it's often it's magnetism or it's dropped. Basically. Yeah.
As soon as it's noticeable, then I think it's worth jumping on it. But I think that is the question comes from the fact that manufacturers obviously have a recommended interval, and I think that it's they err on the side of caution, which is fair enough because you want to make sure that your watches are running well. Obviously, there's a cost to it, so obviously each brand has a specific quote for service, but then it can be more, it can be less, and we'll get into then recurring to or going to independent watchmakers or local watchmakers, which is always, of course, an option to consider. But first, Morgan, what's your experience with? Have you ever had a watch serviced?
So for now, yes, actually, at some point my Serica was not running well.
Okay.
So I sent it back to Serica and they fixed it because I was losing a lot of like 2 minutes a day or whatever. I was like, this is not normal because it's supposed to be running at COSC certification, even a little bit better. So I knew there was something wrong with it.
Right.
So I sent them the watch and they did what they had to do. I'm not a watchmaker, but so now it's running perfectly well.
Nice.
And so I bought this watch 2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So when I bought it, I knew it was serviced, but I also knew that they didn't check. They were not insuring the water resistance.
Right.
So last time we went to Omega with RJ, and I asked them to check if everything was right, especially for me the water resistance because it's a dive watch. I just wanted to make sure it was perfectly fine to put it underwater. So I haven't put a single drop of water on the watch since I got it. And actually, it was a good thing because it's running well within COSC certification, so that's perfect. Right. But they told me the water resistance was not good.
Okay, so you need the gaskets.
Yeah, probably needs the gaskets, and that's also the point. Like if you have a dive watch, make sure to check the water resist. Pretty often, depending on how much you use the watch.
I remember that in the past, at least, that Breitling advised to have your watch checked for water resistance like once a year.
Yeah, exactly.
If you actively use it in the water.
Yeah, I think it's wise actually, because you don't want your watch to be leaking.
Yeah, and the good thing is, I think every watchmaker can check for water resistance. I think all of them have this tool or
little machine where they put the watch in,
measure the pressure.
So that's the nice thing. Is the first thing that most watchmakers are able to do it, and the second thing is it's not that expensive compared to a service which could run you up to 700 or even over 1,000 depending on the brand. I think getting the gaskets replaced and checking for water resistance. Obviously, results will vary and it will depend on where you're located, but typically a watchmaker can do that from 50 to 100 euros.
Yeah.
And then you have the peace of mind that your watch, which is probably likely to be worth quite a bit more than that, is safe to use in the water. Right. And that's I do that quite regularly with my watches because I've used them diving and I've used them I've also acted with quite a lack of caution in the past with results that were completely fine. So for the most part, if I'm going on holiday and I'm going to take a watch and I know that I'm either going to be swimming quite a lot with it or even scuba diving, I will always get the gaskets.
And also for the small story, when we were again at Omega, a watchmaker told me that it's more difficult to have a watch water resistance at 1 meter deep than at 20 or 30 or even more. Because of the pressure, actually, the more pressure you have on the watch, the more the gasket will be compressed, and the better the water resistant will be. Yeah. But 1 meter deep, this is where it's really hard to get a watch properly sealed.
Interesting.
So so if you think I can go swimming like easy without checking my watch, well, actually, it's even maybe worse.
Yeah. I think that has to do because the gaskets are cylindrical.
Yeah, exactly.
In shape, and so when they get pressed, then they fill up the space. But if not, the point of the cylinder in contact with a flat surface is actually quite small.
Exactly.
Something like that. We're not watchmakers, right?
No. But he told me it was easier to have a watch water resistant at 300 meters than it is at 1 meter.
For sure. for sure.
But that's just checking gaskets. I feel it. Having your watch serviced is a bigger job because
For sure.
If you have a proper service done to your watch, the whole movement will be disassembled,
cleaned. They
Oiled.
will remove. They will change
assembled again, oiled and checked, regulated, and so on. It's a job that requires some time.
Definitely.
So I think it's easily up to a few hours per movement.
For sure.
And there, I think you see the difference with the different brands. Of if you look at the cost, I think Lange und Söhne, it's easily 3K away.
Yeah.
I was very surprised with the service cost at Breguet. I think it's 850 or 900 euros for a simple hand winding watch service.
Oh, okay.
And of course more if it's a tourbillon or whatsoever.
Yeah.
Omega is not far away.
750 from
I
last
think
time I checked.
750 is like for a
now a little
simple
bit more.
non-chronograph watch, and it starts for like a moon watch, for example. It starts at 950.
Yeah,
Okay.
it increased a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's gone up since last I checked.
I also believe that due to the coaxial escapement, the interval can be a bit longer because there's less friction. Because friction is the main issue when it comes to watches and the wear and tear in a movement.
For sure.
And what's also important for me is it's how long it will take. With Breguet, it was 6 weeks, but I'm fine with that.
That's reasonable.
I had a Audemars Piguet Royal Oak in the past that needed service. Took like 6 months.
Wow.
For me, that's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It is what
much.
it is. So it's always for me a question of how long will it take. I know Grand Seiko they maintain a very short window, also 5-6 weeks.
Don't you have to send it back to Japan?
No, depends on where you live. But here in where we are in the Netherlands, there's a service center that can also do Grand Seiko.
Okay, so you have like different manufacturer kind of.
Yeah, you have to inform. If you have a
places.
Grand Seiko, go to your Grand Seiko boutique and ask if it needs to go back to Japan or stay inside the country.
Yeah.
Wow,
But even to Japan, it's just the shipping that takes extra time. The duration of the service is not that much longer.
That's a good thing to note, is the fact that a lot of brands will have in whichever country, they will have certified service centers for the most part. So I know that Breitling, Omega, they all have
Rolex.
these here in the Netherlands as well. So it's an interesting thing that it means it doesn't have to go to Switzerland. It means I mean, for us, we're in the Netherlands, so it's not too bad for it to go back to Switzerland. But of course, our audience that are based in North America or even Asia or wherever else in the world where it's a bit more of a journey for the watch to get there, it's something to consider, that you might have a local center. Quick question for you, RJ: when would you consider a local independent watchmaker over sending it back to the brand?
As long as the independent watchmaker, and we use the same watchmaker here in the Netherlands, he's independent. As long as he can source the parts, I'm fine with that. But I know that a lot of brands are very difficult in supplying parts to watchmakers that are not like an official service center. Yeah. Because watchmakers, in order to be a official service center, you need to have the training, you have to have the equipment. So it requires for them a lot of investment. Yeah. And I think that became more and more strict over the years. And now with some independent watchmakers, they said, okay, that doesn't make sense anymore for me. But somehow they are in a circle with other watchmakers that they give each other the parts, or they sell each other the parts, so they can do the service anyway. But just make sure to inquire upfront if they can source original parts.
But also, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that as long as you have the warranty on your watch, if an independent watchmaker opens it and is not certified by the brand, I think you lose your warranty. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. That I can't remember. In the past, you saw this little piece of lacquer. But today, I don't know if they can see it. I mean, if you have a good watchmaker, he opens the case, closes the case.
But that's what I think. That's what I heard, but I'm not sure. But
I think that used to be the case in the past, but not anymore.
Okay.
It's also service is not something in warranty. If it's a warranty issue, you can always send it for repair, I guess. Yeah. But perhaps there's in terms and conditions, there's a little line that says you can only have it done by an authorized
because then
center.
they can say, but your watchmaker wasn't trained enough, so he did that, and so he ruined it, and so that's why now it's not working, so the warranty is off.
I don't think I've ever owned a watch under warranty.
I actually pretty much all of my watches are under warranty.
I've always.
I think the good thing, and that's the good thing about having your watch serviced. That, for example, you can have your moon watch serviced at Omega for $950 or something.
Yeah.
If you do it with an independent watchmaker, it's probably around 400 euros.
Well, that's nice.
It's a nice difference.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you have it done at Omega, you get warranty on the
on the service.
And I think that warranty is 2 years.
That's nice.
And I don't think an independent watchmaker will give you a 2 years warranty.
I take
No,
that
maybe
back.
not.
Then my Seamaster is still under warranty because it was serviced by Omega before I bought it.
There you go.
And I have to say I was very impressed by the condition of that. So obviously there was some refinishing done to it. I think they changed the entire bezel, all the crowns, and everything. So I think that there's definitely, I think that when you need a proper overhaul and you need proper work done, or you really want the best possible result, you send it back to the brand. For me, when I would go to an independent watchmaker would be if I had like a vintage watch that was relatively inexpensive. It might be from a decent brand, but if it's just a simple movement that any watchmaker would be able to service, then I think in that case it would be something worth considering. That's basically where my experience comes from. Is from purchasing vintage watches that were either in need of a service or in a condition in which to get them working they required a bit of work. Then it's when I've sent them to be worked on even before wearing them, and I think I've had services from as little as 90 euros to up to around 200 for a chronograph.
But also talking about giving back the watch to the manufacturer, if it's a Rolex, people get annoyed with that because they will change the dials because the technology evolves, so they will put a new dial, they will change the hands, and you will not get your parts back.
Okay.
So the watch afterward can lose a lot of money in the secondary market because it's going to be considered like a Franken watch. Different parts put together, which is perfectly fine for Rolex, even for the pre-owned certified program that they have. They still consider it properly genuine.
Okay.
But if you on the secondary market, it's not the case at all. And I think Omega, they used to do it.
No, they still do it.
They still do it. So you get all the
old parts back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they will change it. And with Omega, you have a form where you can indicate what things you don't want to have changed.
And Rolex will do the old thing.
Yeah. I think that this flexibility, I know Breitling does it as well, to have the choice, right? If you say, please don't replace the dial. I think the fact that if you have you have quite a few Speedmasters, if you sent a Speedmaster from the 60s in or 70s in for service, you would want to keep the trooting dial.
And you also want to keep the case as it is, maybe not polished so I think it's
you
good
can tick boxes on a sheet. And the same was with Breguet. You can do just the movement service, which was 800 and something. You can always also choose to have the case polished, which I did because it was definitely worn. And then you just you pay a bit more for that, but that's logical.
I heard story about that. Like someone was going to a secondhand dealer. He brought his watch, and I think it was maybe a Comex or Rolex Submariner or something that cost quite a bunch of money, and it has been serviced. And they replaced some pieces on the watch.
Okay.
And the price dropped. It went from 100 more K,
but
to 20K.
That's also a little bit
30K. So
that's the thing. In that case, it's if you have a Comex sub, don't take it to.
But you
gotta also know.
I know. But wow.
Yeah.
But Rolex also has a special service for vintage watches.
Yeah.
We saw that a while ago with the Daytona. We covered it on Fratello.
Yeah, true.
2 years ago.
The
they have a special program for
Yeah.
restoration. So I think they do a good job for vintage as well.
Yeah, but they will do. When you send back a watch, take a look at your Seamaster 300M, and we can compare it to mine, which is not in bad shape, but yours seems to be brand new.
Yeah, it's
really
incredible
really,
the work that they do,
exactly.
and it's Omega. It's hands trained by Omega with Omega tools and
exactly.
The,
so it's
the,
really well
the specifications that they work to. Here's a question for both of you guys, especially for you, Morgan, because you own a Tudor watch. How do you feel about the movement swap practice that some brands, Seiko as well, are known to do, where you send in your watch for service, and in order to save you time waiting for your watch, instead of servicing the actual movement itself, they just pop that movement out, put a serviced one in, and then they'll service that one and then put it in somebody else's watch. Obviously, keeping in mind that you have the choice. At least with Tudor, I think you can specify
That's
whether
cool.
you want it done or not. Whether you want to keep your service, keep your movement. It'll take a little bit longer to do the service. But how do you feel about that?
So I think that if I have the choice, I will keep the same movement in, because for now it's not a collectible watch, and I don't want to sell it or whatever. But I don't know, in 20, 30, 40 years from now,
Right.
it might be better to have the same movement. And also, when you have a watch, for me, having the same movement from A to Z for
for your entire ownership,
for the entire life of the watch, I kind of like that, because I think it's
a big part of the watch.
It's a big part of the watch. I mean, you don't see it, but it's still a big part of the watch. And I'm fortunate enough to own different watches, so I could live without that one for a couple of weeks or a couple of months if needed, and get it back. But then I think I would prefer that.
Yeah,
with Seiko, I get it. I had a SKX 007 surfaced, and they just swapped the movement.
Yeah, that's
and there's no other way. I think the watch was, when I bought it, €300 new, or $399, I don't know. And the service was like 150 or something, and they just swapped the movement. Boom, that's it.
But that's
And what do you expect for a watch with that price? If you do like a proper full servicing the movement, that would be so costly.
Yeah, of course. It would not make sense. It would cost more than the watch.
But with the Tudor, I feel it's a luxury watch.
Yeah.
It's a 4K, or I don't know how much watch. And there I feel, man, service the movement and put it back. It's part of the experience. It's part of the ownership.
But do you think it might be a reactive choice? I mean, the brands might have done this because they get a lot of customers who go, "Hey, why does it take so long?"
In the past, I think in the past it was more common practice, and that's also Omega. They did that in the past when they serviced the old Ploprofs. The movements, the original ones, were quite shitty.
Right.
And they replaced it with chronometer movements from the Constellation series.
Oh, interesting.
So you often see those movements if you look at the archives.
Right.
It was common practice because these watches were used by divers, so they got a lot of beating and a lot of wearing and so on.
So they needed something really strong,
and it needed to work and so on. So they just replaced the movements.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that something you saw more often in the past, but today a watch has a different function.
Yeah,
it's more of a luxury item, and there I feel it's part of the thing. It's also part of the ownership of a watch, that it has the same movement, that you service the movement, that they service your movement. And they just swap it out.
For sure.
But what I feel is what is more important to me is people should realize when they buy a watch what the total cost of ownership is.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it doesn't end with your €4,000 for a Tudor. You also need to pay for service once every 5, 6, 7 years. And that really adds up, especially if you have to watch for a lifetime.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an expensive thing.
At the same time, the more watches you own, the less often you'll have to service one specific watch. Because I think that those recommended 3-year service intervals,
if you wear it every day,
if that's like your one watch that you use the most. So for example,
the question is it better to have to let a watch run, or is it then better to not wear a watch that often because of the oil thickens and so on?
Yeah, but I think you really need quite some time before the oil will not be efficient.
You need years, I guess.
I think that's such a matter of diminishing returns. I mean, I'm sure people. I would love to hear from the audience as well, to hear from their opinions, and if any of them are watchmakers, to hear from them as well. But I think that that's honestly, like, I know that people are big into watch winders, and people will keep their watches running. It could also be for the convenience of having them running on time when you want to run out of the house. Personally, I don't do that.
No,
so
it's the same. I have a Ploprof, and it's my holiday watch, so I wear it like for multiple weeks per year in a row.
Right.
But I only wear it
and then it will stay in the safe.
And we put it on the timing machine in our office. And it's still spot on. It's 5 years old.
And here's another thing. This obviously, like, watches have been around for a very long time, and so have watchmakers, and so have the movements and the oils which are used in them. I don't think an oil used in a watch movement from the 1950s or the 60s or 70s is the same as the oils that brands use now.
Not.
I think that the oils used by brands now are probably a lot more high tech. I mean, it obviously depends on the brand used, on the brand and what oil they use. But I think brands probably use oils that are now a lot less volatile and a lot less reactive to the environment. Could be, right? I mean, it's a guess, but that's an interesting topic.
I think that
an interesting debate.
For me, the best tip is, before you buy a watch, inform what a service cost will be, the service cost will be, because like I said, Lange, they have, they probably do a lot, and it's probably very time consuming to service a Lange watch.
It's going to be perfect, like brand new when you get your watch back.
Be very aware what it will cost you
for sure
to own that specific watch, because the service for an AP or Patek or a Lange is very different than for a Rolex, Omega, or Breitling.
But I mean, it's the same with cars. It's the same with cars.
Exactly.
If you buy a Ferrari, you're going to pay the price of the car.
And then, common knowledge.
Yeah,
I think if just someone walks into a retailer shop or a jeweler shop and sees a Rolex or Omega or Breitling, says, I really want to have that watch. I think the salesperson should really be obliged.
To say, okay,
to
so
inform them about
you,
the service costs.
Well, it's part of educating people.
Exactly.
It's educating consumers, right? I mean, you don't a guy at a car dealership doesn't have to tell you, hey, by the way, you have to pay road tax,
because
and you have to pay insurance.
And also, the difference is that the car will blink at some point. Hey, this car needs service.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a legal requirement, right? You have like the government regulated so that people can be safe.
Yeah.
So people aren't running. I mean, it's okay if you run around with a watch that hasn't been serviced in 10 years, but if you're driving a car that hasn't been maintained in a decade or two, that could be quite dangerous at some point. So,
but also, I think you have to keep in mind also, because nowadays, and I'm also guilty of that, I love having a in-house movement, because this is good. I mean, it's
you
nice
bought the wrong
to
watch, man.
No, but let me finish my point. But when you think about that, an in-house movement will maybe be more specific, and it will probably cost you more than the ETA-based caliber that I have on my Seamaster, which will be really easy for pretty much any watchmaker in the world to service, and it will not maybe not be the case for a more complicated movement.
Yeah.
So it's also it's going to cost you way less money to service that watch than if you need to service that one. And I think it's also something that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you send it back to Omega. I wonder what the difference might be, because they would consider this a time only watch. They would consider this a time only watch.
I think for the
it
price
might be
tag,
standard,
there's no difference. But if you that watch that Morgan has there with the ETA-based movement,
you could send it to your local independent watchmaker. And
I think it's, for me, it would not make sense to bring it back to Omega
unless you wanted like a full
exactly like refinished in the warranty.
As well, of course.
But I mean, I much prefer saving money, having it serviced by an independent watchmaker, and I will be good to go.
Yeah,
there would be no problem.
Food for thought. I don't think there's any sort of right answer.
No, of course. There's nothing wrong to want to pay more to have it done by the brand, which I completely respect that. Yeah. But then this is your choice in the end.
Absolutely.
I think in the end we can say just make sure you're informed before you purchase a watch.
Yeah. Definitely, for sure. Awesome. Well, let's move on to our comment of the week.
Oh,
we do have one. It comes from Chad Carson 4823, and he says, "Awesome content as always. Where is Lex?"
Oh, where's Lex?
Yeah, where is Lex?
Where is he?
I don't know. Well, he's not here today. And he also says, I wonder how the Code 1159 would have been received if AP had named it differently. I feel this was their grandstand of saying we're not just the Royal Oak brand, and they bombed on the name so badly. Do we like the name? Do we have strong feelings on
If the watch would be really good and really nice, I don't care about the name that much.
I don't care.
So I feel that's not the issue with the watch basically. And I also have to say, and I wasn't a fan at first, and I think AP wasn't a fan at first, because when that watch was introduced during the then SIHH, they told us explicitly, don't take a picture from the front of the watch. And I think then
that's weird.
You did a not so nice job on the watch. But I have to say the current generation of Code 1159, especially the three-handers, the dials are really nice.
Those are super
beautiful.
cool.
I have to say.
Yeah,
I think the first ones were too bland.
Yeah.
Only the ones with the complications, they looked nice. And the three-handers just looked like a time walker.
But the profile of these watches is really special. You don't expect that. When you see a picture from the front of the watch, that's a classic, pretty much classic watch. And then when you flip it to the side, there you can see that's really complex. Yeah.
So no, I don't think it's about the name. I think it's about it was about the watch and how it was done. Yeah. But I'm not a fan of the 1159 name as well.
Okay. Hey,
for me.
But thank you for the comment. That was food for thought as well. And of course, thank you guys for joining me. And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. And as always, tune in next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. See you then.